Okay, cool. Sorry, you broke up there, David, as you were introducing me, so I'm going to assume that was a really nice introduction. Excellent. Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone, for kind of joining in this session. I'm John. I run Overdrive Digital. We specialize in paid search, paid social campaigns for our clients. So really, this presentation is all about telling you what we see working right now in Facebook ads. So that's really the goal, and hopefully useful for everyone who's joining. If you've got any questions, just like David said, drop them in the chat. Drop me a line on Twitter. Would love to kind of help you out and answer any questions that you might have following this. So in terms of Facebook itself, like I think one of the biggest frustrations or challenges that I see many people kind of falling into is the platform has so many flashy, shiny things, and it's so easy to get caught up in like shiny object syndrome, where you're chasing the latest ad format or the latest feature or the new kind of audience targeting that they release or a new placement. And actually, like, you have to focus on what's working. And quite often what we see is it's not the new shiny stuff. Test it, but don't get caught up in it, because yeah, it's definitely a common mistake that we see people making. So as mentioned at the beginning, like, I really want this presentation to be a good, clear view on what we're seeing working right now. So hopefully there'll be takeaways within the presentation that you can go back and look at your accounts today or tomorrow, start implementing and see some improvements from. So step one, this sounds so obvious, but I kind of have to put it in. And it's, 9 times out of 10, when we inherit an account or if we're reviewing an account, the step hasn't been done. I'm a huge believer in setting lines in the sand. So really, kind of before you start running ads, before you restructure or do anything like that, you have to have a really clear view on what good looks like. And that's going to be completely different for every business. So you have to kind of really understand what good looks like for you. So what does a profitable CPA look like? What does lifetime value look like? How much are you willing to spend on the first purchase, knowing that you may get 2, 3, 4 repeat purchases after? Again, completely different for every business. What ROAS do you need to hit to make this viable? All of these questions have to be answered for your business. You also have to really understand the costs that are involved, and it is more than just the media spent. So I put a post together that I've linked to here that goes through everything you might want to consider when you're forecasting spend and putting together your costs. So things like resource, agency fees, team, design, all of these things add into the cost, and therefore the results that you need to hit to make this viable. So before you do anything, answer these questions, get a clear line in the sand. Even if it's a rough estimate, that's going to be way, way, way better than nothing. So that's a really simple, obvious point to start with, but definitely one that a lot of people miss out on accounts that we see anyway. So once you've done that, the next kind of key thing is account structure. Similar with kind of PPC, like the structure of your Facebook ads accounts are going to have a huge impact on the results and your ability to manage those results. And I think there's really kind of 3 things that are massively important to consider when you're looking at account structure. First off, you have to make your life easy. So you need to build a structure that is manageable, that you can go in and you can kind of work in without getting lost immediately. I think that means keeping things simple. So one of my goals when we're setting up a new account is how can I achieve the goals that I need to achieve in the most simplest way possible? Start there and then build out if you need to get more complex. You also need to get a really quick view on performance, particularly when you're trading through a period like Black Friday or peak trading. You need to be able to log into the account, know exactly what's working, know exactly what's not working, and be able to refine and make decisions immediately. If you've got a messy, overly complex structure, that becomes a nightmare really, really quickly. So how simple can you do it? start there, then build out. This is our starting point. So normally when we're setting up a new account, we're looking at 3 tiers. So top of funnel, mid funnel, lower funnel. Yes, it gets more complex than this as we go forwards, but this is our starting point. So the top of funnel, this is really about awareness, but awareness has a risk of getting very fluffy very quickly. So we're still kind of measuring this against concrete KPIs like cost of traffic, video views, length of those video views, i.e. quality, engagement. We really want to look at how that awareness is contributing. Typically, these are larger lookalikes based on traffic and page engagement, broad interests, kind of quite large audiences. Then when we get into the mid funnel, like our goal here is starting to kind of move slightly more towards customer acquisition. So we're measuring that against the cost per acquisition, or a ROAS. Typically, these are lookalikes based on purchase behavior. So number of purchases, purchase value, frequency of purchases, that kind of stuff, depending on what data we've got in the pixel. Normally, we'll start with a 2%, maybe a 4%, again, depending on things like spend and how much data we have available. And then the lower funnel, this is all about retargeting and nudging someone towards that purchase. So it's normally either kind of website custom audiences, so people who have viewed the website or a particular part of the website, or with e-commerce, it's usually heavily weighted towards DPA, so dynamic product ads, where we're retargeting people who have engaged with products via a review or an add to cart, but not yet purchased. Here, it's all about revenue, it's all about ROI, and we're measuring it on ROAS or CPA. So this is where we start. Within each section, it can get more complex quite quickly with different audience testing or different markets, if we're running in different countries. But as a blueprint, this is where we start. Some of you may well have heard of or be testing campaign budget optimization. Facebook were going to be making this mandatory. So if you don't know what campaign budget optimization is, it's a change that Facebook have put in whereby rather than setting your budgets at the ad set level, you'd be setting your budgets at the campaign level and then leaving the spend decision up to Facebook. We've tested it extensively. On some accounts it works, on some accounts it doesn't work. It has fairly big structural implications because you're setting your budgets one tier up from where you used to be setting them. So there's quite a lot of complications that go with it. Thank God it's no longer mandatory, but definitely test it. Some accounts do better, some don't, but at least we're now free to test it rather than being forced to use it, thankfully. If you do go down the campaign budget optimization route, you can also kind of set minimum or maximum daily spends on your ad sets. So if you want a little bit more control, you can get that. However, if you hover over that information icon, even Facebook itself will tell you that they'll try to meet the minimum, but it's not guaranteed. So if you're going down the campaign budget optimization route, you are handing over a fair amount of control to Facebook. You have to be aware of that, even if you're putting steps in place like minimum or maximum spends on your ad sets. So in terms of audiences and what we see working, quite a lot of variation amongst accounts, obviously depending on the sector or depending on the size of the audience, the nature of the audience, the nature of the product. But there are definitely themes that we see across accounts that do well. The first point here is that as a business, you've probably done a fair amount of research into your personas. So you know who your customers are, you know what they like, you know what the demographics are. That doesn't always translate directly into good targeting on Facebook. So this is an example of an interest-based audience where we've gone, we want to target parents who like BMW 5 Series and also like natural foods. That may kind of really summarize at a very specific level your audience, but it doesn't necessarily work best when it comes to targeting in Facebook. So don't always assume that your audience research needs to translate directly into targeting on Facebook. Lookalikes do really well. Bigger lookalikes, so 5% plus, are starting to do a lot better for us, particularly through peak trading periods when you need volume. So I would definitely start, if you have the pixel data, yes, do the interest-based targeting. Make sure that you're targeting the right people broadly, but definitely roll out lookalike audiences. We see a huge amount of success with them, and don't be afraid to go big. However, if you are running lookalike audiences, the better data you put in, the better the audience you're going to get out on the back. So having good, stable, reliable campaign performance using lookalikes does require a decent volume of data. So if you've only got, say, 100 purchases a week, a purchase-based lookalike from that data isn't going to be as high quality as an e-commerce site or a pixel that's getting 5,000 purchases a week. There's going to be a difference in the quality. So you do have to be aware of the fact that if you're starting from scratch and you don't have this data, you might have to roll into lookalikes as you go, because the better the data that goes in, the better the audience that you get out the other end. So if volume is an issue, if we take that example of purchases, if that is an issue, then you can look for other data points or micro conversions, if you like, that do have more data. So things like page fans and engagement, add to carts or initiate checkouts, product views, key landing page views. These are all good data points to use for lookalike audiences if you are struggling to get the volume on the pixel data. So if you haven't got the purchase volume, it's not necessarily an issue. Just kind of step back up the funnel or journey a little bit and see what you do have. So in terms of ad formats, again, this is really where people get caught up in shiny object syndrome. So there's so many different ad formats we can use, from video to collection ads to canvas ads to messenger ads there's so many that you can use. We tend to find, particularly for e-commerce, that the basics still perform best. So even in 2020, we're still relying heavily on ad formats like single image ads, carousels, and stories. These are the mainstays of our accounts that we run, and we typically kind of see the best performance from these ad formats. So again, don't get caught up in collection ads, for example. They look amazing, but we haven't always seen a brilliant positive response from them. So don't be afraid to go simple, because it does really work. The other point with ad creative is to try and not get caught up in bias and your own opinions. This is a couple of examples of ads that we run for a client called Saint. As a brand, they've got amazing creative. They invest heavily in photography and shoots and video shoots and all that type of stuff. Everything you would want, like the dream creative for Facebook ads. However, what sells are these very basic product carousels. The click-through rate, the CPCs, the engagement on the really creative stuff is good. However, what drives the best CPA and what drives the best ROAS is the simple stuff. So we tend to use the kind of really nice, slick, creative ads for these guys at the top of the funnel when we're trying to get new eyeballs on the brand, introduce the brand to people. Works really well for that. But when we're trying to drive revenue, we're using these really simple ads. So, in my head, I'm going, oh, you know what, that picture of the motorbike's amazing. That's going to kill it. Actually, that's not always the case. With single image ads, use the larger images. You can also put a video into this format. I know we're calling it single image, but video fits in to that size. About a year ago-ish, Facebook updated the format, so you no longer have to just stick with the 1200 by 628 landscape ratio. You can now get a full 1-to-1 square, which means in someone's feed, when they're scrolling through visually, it's going to take up way more space in that feed than a kind of classic 1200 by 628 landscape image. So go big with your images, and you can be more creative with that as well. So in terms of what really works in the feed, like, you still have to try and jump out. News feeds on Facebook and Instagram are very cluttered. There's a lot going on, from, you know, group updates to pictures of dogs, and also lots of other ads from competition as well. So you have to try and jump out. So things like brighter colors work really nicely, GIFs, so kind of cycling through a series of images or a short video. These sorts of things tend to work really well at stopping the scroll. And that is the first goal, really, is how can you kind of jump out enough to stop someone's scroll through the news feed. So that's kind of what we see working. Again, it's pretty simple stuff, but yeah, it's focusing on what drives the revenue and what drives the best CPA. So placements is a bit of a, I wouldn't say touchy subject for me, because placements are placements, but it's something I feel really strongly about. And there was a lot of change through 2019 on placements. So lots of new placements coming in, like Facebook search, Instagram explore, lots of new messenger placements, all these types of things that, yeah, you really want to be testing that, but we still find the most stable performance from the old classics like the news feed. One thing to note with placements is that Facebook will push you to automated placements. So first off, it's the default option when you set up an ad set to go for automated placements, where Facebook will distribute your ads across all placements. And if you speak to any rep, they will tell you, no, use auto placements. But you can see here from this slide that it's so different. You know, you could be running an ad in the news feed or on the right-hand side or in Messenger or on Facebook Marketplace, totally different context. And some brands, like luxury brands, for example, probably won't want to be on Facebook Marketplace because it doesn't fit the brand. So there's that element too. And also, you know, when we see really strong performance from placements like Instagram stories, I want to make sure that I'm spending appropriately, you know. So to me, like, placements are one of the areas that you don't want to automate. That's my recommendation. News feeds are still the mainstay. It's the most popular placement by far. However, it is the most expensive typically because it's the most competitive. So you really have to make sure it's working for you. But typically it's kind of a really kind of key part of the campaigns that we run. Stories are absolutely amazing for our clients across all sectors, pretty much. Really strong performance that we see in retargeting. I think it's a really just well-used placement on Instagram for people using the platform socially. So it's a great touch point. It's also a bit cheaper than news feeds because there's less competition. And you can also be more creative because you've got more space. So for me, stories are one of the best kind of placements on Instagram. Not seen so much success on Facebook stories, but Instagram stories, absolutely a big part of the campaigns that we run. In terms of costs and technical details, like, these are kind of like other like really important points here. So really, like, you're going to be paying, if you're advertising on Facebook, you're paying for impressions pretty much. So most advertisers, depending on, you know, how they set the campaigns, you know, whatever objective they're choosing, they're paying for impressions. So understanding what your CPMs are is really important. And it's an active live auction or ad marketplace. So CPMs change, they're dynamic. They change based on competition. So again, every ad account will have a different CPM. Different objectives will have different CPMs, and different market environments will have different CPMs. So this is some CPM data that we saw through the COVID lockdown, which are kind of still in, I suppose. So pretty much instantly, mid-March, when lockdown kicked in, for this particular client, which is a beauty brand in the UK, CPMs dropped by about 60% or up to 60%, sustained there, jumped up in May. Then we had a week off with the recent kind of Black Lives Matters. They took a pause on the campaigns, which was really good. And now CPMs are kind of back to where they were prior to lockdown. So you can see how much the cost of advertising for this client in particular has changed over the last 3 or 4 months. So you have to understand that this is going to have a big impact on your campaigns. And we are seeing a big impact over the last week or so on performance because CPMs have kind of come back up. So you have to understand them. If you are seeing like really high CPMs and it's unsustainable, then try different campaign objectives. So a traffic campaign will have a much lower CPM than a conversion campaign, which is great. Obviously, you have to weigh up the output in terms of CPA and see if that reduction in cost pays off throughout the whole kind of conversion journey. But different objectives will have a huge impact on the costs. So if you're struggling with CPMs and you're struggling with costs, try a different objective and see if you can get conversions from there. This is particularly important when there's not a huge amount of ad spend budget at play. And your pixel is everything. If you want to have solid, sustainable performance on Facebook ads, you need to have a really good, thorough pixel implementation that's passing accurate data and a good volume of data too. So if you're running e-commerce, you have to go through and audit all the e-commerce events. So not just purchases, but test the add to cart, test the product views, or content view as they call it, test the search events, get them all in, test them thoroughly. Use the Pixel Helper extension in Chrome if you haven't got it. That will tell you exactly what data you're sending to Facebook. So if you need to debug it, actually with Facebook, it's pretty simple to debug and test the Pixel implementation. This is a screenshot from the Pixel Helper for one of our clients. Bidding. Everyone's going to have a slightly different opinion, I think, on bidding. My opinion is that if you're new to Facebook advertising or if it's a new account for you, there are going to be bigger fish to fry first. So things like account structure, getting your pixel data right, getting your audiences right, getting your creative right, they're the things that are going to have the bigger impact. Once you've got that sorted, then by all means go in and start testing bidding. So, you know, cost caps or big caps or target cost. Some really good options there for you. But I think for me, like, make sure you've got those fundamentals sorted first before you start going and experimenting with bidding. This is, again, a slight frustration with Facebook ads and its reliability. Anyone who's kind of worked on Facebook ads for some time will probably have come up against an issue or two. It's an amazing platform. I absolutely love it. However, it does have its issues, shall we say. If anyone's had any frustrations, drop them in the chat and we can kind of group therapy it out. But they did release last year a status dashboard. And the idea here is that you can follow that link at the bottom and it will tell you if there's any known issues with the platform. I haven't seen this reflect reality a huge amount. So by all means, go and check it, but it's not the most accurate, up-to-date view on performance or reliability that I've seen. But do go and check it if anything kind of goes wrong. If you want to kind of get a really honest view on Facebook performance or Facebook issues and reliability, go and follow David Herman. His Twitter feed is gold. If there's something going on with Facebook ads, he'll tweet about it. If there's great performance, he'll tweet about it. If he's seeing lots of kind of drops in performance, he'll tweet about it for sure. So if you want an up-to-date reality check on how Facebook is doing, I'd say following David Herman is probably a lot more reliable than looking at the Facebook status dashboard. So though this presentation is about Facebook ads, but I really feel that testing different platforms is also a really important step for advertisers. So to me, it's just best practice to not put all your eggs in one basket. There's plenty of other options out there depending on your sector and your audience. So don't be afraid to just dip your toes in and test. What you'll find is if you start to kind of branch out from Facebook, that actually the majority of other social ad platforms, probably apart from LinkedIn, they're relatively similar. Pinterest is like a hybrid of kind of Facebook and Twitter. TikTok's very similar to Pinterest. But Pinterest is great. So if you've got clients or you're working in the home decor sector or furniture or anything like that, it's going to fit in really well with Pinterest because that's the place that people go to research and design things. So if you can be on there, you're going to be getting your brand in front of people at the earliest point. TikTok, we are actively advertising on TikTok now with a number of clients. You can get beta access to their self-service platform. You have to have an invite. So if you want that, drop me a note and we can basically recommend people. So if you want to give it a try, let me know. Again, like it just pays to kind of at least experiment with this stuff. And also just go out to other kind of platforms as well. So I know Google Maps and YouTube, it's not technically social. It's kind of a hybrid, I guess. YouTube is between search and social. But I think it's another good place to be. So really the point there is, yes, even if you're seeing like really strong, solid performance on Facebook, don't be afraid to branch out and kind of spread your eggs a little bit. So just some kind of key takeaways from that. Facebook is still doing really well. This, you know, no matter what you read, no matter what you see, there is still plenty of ROI to be made. We see it performing consistently with the clients that we work on. So it's definitely still a great platform to be working on. Keep it simple. Like, what is the simplest way you can structure and run your campaigns that's still going to help you meet your goals? If you need a hand, let me know. Drop me a tweet, drop me an email, drop a question in the chat. Would love to hear from you. And we do also have a podcast with loads of kind of frank advice and discussions on this type of stuff. So please go and check it out, subscribe, and you'll get a lot more content there as well. So thank you very much, everybody. Hope that was useful and interesting. Drop me an email, drop me a tweet. Would love to hear from you. Any questions? I still can't hear you, David. There he is.
There we are. Can you hear me now?
Got you.
Right, fantastic. With automatic placements, we find that spend is heavily weighted towards in-feed and stories. Would you still recommend disabling auto placements even if they are spending very little?
Yes. Yeah, partly because some of the ad placements, like the audience network, I don't even want to spend a penny on there because I've never seen a decent conversion. So why even spend £1 on it? Also, Instagram stories do so well across a number of our clients that I want to be spending, in some cases, the majority of our budget on that placement. And if I'm using auto placements, I don't get that control.
Fantastic. Charles asks, what's, if any of you, is your experience of using Facebook ads for app downloads? And do you have any advice on that?
We've done a little bit of it. The majority of our work is kind of like B2B lead gen or e-com. So the fundamentals are still the same. The biggest difference is in tracking. So making sure that your pixel is implemented correctly on the app, and it's slightly harder to test and debug. So that's the main, I think that's probably the main consideration there.
Fantastic. Henry's asking whether organic posts are really obsolete on Facebook, and should you still be doing both organic and paid, or really focus just on paid?
Yeah, organic is kind of pay to play now. So I still think you need to be doing the organic community building and customer service, and feeding content and keeping in front of your customers. You probably just need to put a little bit of money behind it to make sure it gets fully to your audience. So yes, but put a little bit of money behind it to maximize that effort.
And what experience have you had for ads being rejected for odd reasons?
Loads. Yeah. I mean, I can't see who asked that question, but if there's any reasons that you've got, drop them in. Sometimes the reasons literally make no sense at all, like no sense at all. Sometimes it's a misunderstanding. Like we have a client that sells souvenirs, and some of those souvenirs are face masks, so like actual masks, right? And when COVID hit, they all got banned because they thought we were selling surgical or like face masks for health reasons, which we weren't. So sometimes that happens. We've kind of run ads before for people who sell art prints, and there's like a not nudity, but like it's just a picture, and sometimes that gets flagged. So sometimes it kind of, you can see how it might make sense. Other times it's just not. Whenever it happens, appeal it. Just, it's really quick to do a review decision, appeal the decision. More often than not, if it's a mistake, it will get reviewed and back into play pretty quickly.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions from everyone. John, that was a really good talk. I'm sorry my connection just died on me.
That's all right.
Thanks very much for that. Everyone, if you could show your appreciation by doing a hand clap in the chat. That appears to be the culture at the moment, so thanks very much for that. That's brilliant.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
Well done. Thanks very much, John.
No problem. Right, cheers.